Okay, Sherry, you're ready to go when you are.
Evening, this Committee of Adjustment meeting of Tuesday, April the 26th, 2022 will now come to order. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of the committee, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none, please note that in the minutes. We will now go to our planner to announce the purpose of the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is the sound okay? You hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So the committee tonight is holding a public hearing for 6 applications in accordance with Section 45 of the Planning Act as amended in order to consider applications for relief from Bylaw 2009-021 being the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the Township of Selwyn. The prescribed notices of the public meeting were provided by prepaid first-class mail to all residents within 60-meter radius of the subject properties. Ministries and agencies were circulated via email. The subject properties were also posted with a sign advertising tonight's public hearing. The notices were also available on the Township's website. The notice circulation complies with the requirements of the Planning Act. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public hearing or make written submissions to the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Selwyn before the variances are granted, the person or public or body may not be entitled to appeal the decision of the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Selwyn to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Selwyn on the proposed minor variances, you must make written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee, to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Selwyn by mail, fax, email, or Dropbox. So going first to the first application on the agenda for tonight is A09-22. This is for Platt and Kidd at 2435 Upper Chemung Drive. The purpose of the application is to seek relief in order to construct a 676 square foot detached garage, 465.4 square foot dwelling addition, a 210 square foot covered deck, and a 66 square foot covered front porch. There's a series of 12 variances requested or required in order to proceed with this development. I'll try to go quickly through them. One is to increase the maximum height of a detached garage from 4 meters to 4.57 meters, to decrease the minimum separation distance between a dwelling and a detached garage from 2 meters to 1.82 meters, to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 15 meters to 5.76 meters to a garage, to reduce the minimum exterior side yard setback from 10 meters to 8.48 meters to a garage, to reduce the minimum exterior side yard setback from 10 meters to 9.14 meters to a covered porch, to reduce the minimum interior side yard setback from 4.5 meters to 4.11 meters to a covered deck, to reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 10 meters to 7.13 meters to a dwelling addition, to increase the maximum total lot coverage from 20% to 21.9%, to reduce the minimum setback from the street center line from 20 meters to 15.76 meters, to reduce the sum total setback of 10 meters from the center line of Township Road plus the applicable front yard setback from 25 meters to 15.76 meters to a garage. Similarly, to reduce the applicable exterior side yard setback for a planned width of road from 20 meters to 18.48 meters to a garage. And finally, to reduce the center line setback from an exterior side yard from 20 meters to 19.14 meters to a covered porch. You'll see through my report that it meets the 4 tests of a minor variance. I do recommend this application for approval. With regard to the requirement for an archaeological assessment, we are not considering that the covered deck, it extends well beyond the existing dwelling area, and therefore the project site is not considered to be disturbed. And within the over excavation area needed to construct the dwelling, and an assessment appears to be warranted in this particular case. We have comments from in support of the application from the Otonabee Region Conservation Authority. Also, the Curve Lake First Nation is recommending the Archaeological Assessment, and the Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board has no concern with the application. If there's any questions in regard to this, I'd be happy to take those.
Thank you, Chair. I see that the agent, Holly Richards-Conley, is on the line. Holly, have you got anything to add?
Yes, through you, the chair, to the committee. The archaeological assessment has already been completed and nothing was found.
Thank you very much. And I see that the owners, Janice Platt and Murray Kidd, are on the line. Is there anything that you would like to add to this?
No, that's okay. I just wanted to add that we did do the archaeological study.
Okay, thanks for this. All right. Is there anyone on the line, Deputy Clerk, that is opposed to this application?
We have no one else here on the line for this application, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to committee. Are there any questions? Anita?
Not a question, just a comment. Looking at the shape of the lot, and I don't recall that we've ever had an application that was so challenging. It's quite challenging with the 12 different variances that are in here. So I just kudos to Holly and to Per, and good job.
Okay, any other questions? So the way that we work this, these are treated as consent items. We will go through each one, and at the end, file a motion for all the applications. We will now go on, pair to file number A1122, please.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So A11-22, this is for 1165 Cannot Drive for the Harringtons. The purpose of the application is, or the reliefs or what they're going to be constructing is a new 84.89 or 914 square foot dwelling addition, a 96.2 square foot covered front porch, and a 896 square foot attached garage. Specifically, the reliefs being required are reduction in the high water mark setback from 30 meters to 22.7 meters to a dwelling addition, a reduction to the minimum required side yard setback from 3 meters to 1.3 meters to the dwelling addition, and to increase the maximum total lot coverage from 20 to 23.46%. Specifically in regard to the 30-meter setback, the existing dwelling is located at 16.9 meters from Shaman Lake, whereas the addition will be located at 22.7 meters from Shaman Lake, hence being no closer than the existing structure. Information from the applicant confirmed that where the addition is going has been previously excavated below topsoil to a depth of 2 feet below topsoil. So in this case, in reviewing the need for an archaeological assessment, I find that it's not required. Otherwise, I find the application meets the 4 tests of a minor variance, and I do recommend this for approval. We do have comments from Curve Lake recommending sort of a standard form letter recommending an archaeological assessment. We have comments from the Otonabee Region Conservation Authority in support of the application with their sort of standard condition with a landscaping plan that they would like included, which it has been. And they're also saying Conservation Authority permits are required in this case, which they would have to be obtained prior to building permit being issued. And the Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board has comments of no concern as well. And that's my report. I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you. Deputy Clerk, is there anyone on the line to support or oppose this application?
Madam Chair, we don't have anyone on the line. The owner was registered to speak. I don't see that that they're in attendance, and no one else is here in regards to support or opposition of this application.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to the committee members. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll move on now to A1223, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Moving on to A12-22. This is for the 2181 Marshal Lane. The requested or the purpose of the application is in order to construct a new 2,142 square foot dwelling, 60 square foot covered entry, and a 474 square foot covered porch or veranda. The reliefs being requested is simply, or just one in this case, straightforward, to reduce the minimum high water setback from 30 meters to 21.28 meters to the covered porch of the proposed new dwelling. In this case, an archaeological assessment has already been completed, and a stage 4 is being required. Some artifacts, both pre-contact and Euro-Canadian artifacts, were found on site. So a stage 4 will be needed prior to construction. Other than that, I find that the application meets the 4 tests of a minor variance, and I do recommend this application for approval. Once again, we have sort of the same 3 commenting agencies that provided comment. The Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board has no concern. The Conservation Authority is in support. Once again, Conservation Authority permits will be required for development at this site. And the Curve Lake First Nation does recommend the archaeological assessment, which obviously has been completed. And in addition, this site is also in a source water protection area, and the required restricted land use notice has been issued by the risk management official. And those are my comments on this application. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Fair. I see that the agent, Dennis Jenkins, is on the line. Is there anything you wish to add to Bear's report?
Madam Chair, no, there's nothing else I'd like to add.
All right, thank you. Deputy Clerk, is there anyone that registered to speak in opposition to this?
I'm sure we have no one else here for this application.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to committee. Are there any comments or questions? Donna?
And through you to Pear. Pear, I just wondered, what is the difference in a stage 4 archaeological, you know what I mean, assessment?
So I through you, Madam Chair, my understanding of stage 4 is once you get to that point, you're looking at preserving sites and removing them off site. Obviously, the preferred method of preserving artifacts is if they can keep them on site. But I guess in discussions between the archaeologist and the proponent, there's going to be construction activity in the areas that will require or where the artifacts are likely to occur. So they're going to have to do additional work to remove those artifacts from the construction site.
Thank you.
What's an example of some of the artifacts that may have been found there?
So I do have the report here in front of me. So some of the example includes, let me see, there were some buttons, I think. There were some arrowheads. There's some pottery shards. I think there was a picture of some small children's toys. Obviously Euro-Canadian. Those are some examples of some of the artifacts that were found.
Any other questions? We'll move on to A1322, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Moving on to A13-22. This is for 895 Chemong View Drive. The applicant seeks to just construct a 231 square foot sunroom addition to an existing dwelling. So the relief requested is only to reduce the minimum high water mark setback from 30 meters to 21.4 meters to a sunroom addition. In this regard, the existing structure is approximately 21.03 meters from Chemong Lake, and the sunroom addition, as I said, is 21.4 meters, so it's not encroaching further to Chemong Lake. In this case, as the sunroom addition is in proximity to the existing dwelling, so we're considering the site pre-disturbed because it's within the excavation area for the cement block wall dwelling foundation. So we're not recommending, or I'm not recommending an archaeological assessment in this particular case. Other than that, I find that the application meets the 4 tests of a minor variance, and I do recommend this application for approval. Similarly to the other applications tonight, we have comments from the Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board of no concern. The Autonomy Region Conservation Authority is in support of the application. And a permit is not required at this particular site. And the Curve Lake First Nation is recommending again that an archaeological assessment be completed. Those are my comments on this particular application. I'll be happy to take any questions.
I will turn it over to, I was told, Deputy Clerk, that Ron Fear, the agent, would be online for this application. I don't see him.
That's correct, Madam Chair. He has not logged in.
Okay, thank you. I do see that there is support from a neighbor, Jim Petrie. Petrie, is there anything that you would like to say?
No, thanks. Just wanted to show up to show support. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deputy Clerk, is there anyone on the line in opposition?
We have no one else here for this application.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to committee members. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to A1422, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Moving on to A14. Dash 22. Just give me a second here. There it is. I just misplaced my report there for a second. So this application is for 1471 Shannon Drive. And the application, they're seeking to construct a 125.29 square foot sunroom addition, 1,061.32 square foot attached garage, and a 40.9 square foot covered front porch. The release being requested or being required in this case is to reduce the minimum high water setback from 30 meters to 12 meters to a sunroom addition, to reduce the minimum high water setback from 30 meters to 19.3 meters to a covered porch addition, to reduce the minimum high water setback from 30 meters to 26.6 meters to a garage addition, and to increase the maximum lot coverage from 20 to 20.89%. In this particular case, given the distance from the primarily the distance for the attached garage from the original dwelling, we can't consider that the site has been pre-disturbed, and for this reason an archaeological assessment appears to be required. The existing dwelling is located at the same 12 meters from the shoreline or the high water mark that the closest addition being proposed tonight, being the sunroom, is also going to be at the same distance at 12 meters from Buckhorn Lake. I find that the application meets the 4 tests of a minor variance. I do recommend this application for approval. Similar, again, once we have comments from the Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board of no concern for this application. The Conservation Authority is in support. And again, because this is near waterfront, a permit is required from the Conservation Authority and will be a condition of the approval of the minor variance. And again, the Curve Lake First Nation is recommending the archaeological assessment. Those are my comments on this file. I'll be happy to take any questions.
I understand that the agent Holly Richards Conley is on the line. Is there anything you wish to add?
No, thank you. Application.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that has signed on, Deputy Clerk, to support this application?
We have no one else here in support or opposition, Madam.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to committee. Any questions? Donna.
Yes, thank you. Through you to Pear. I'm looking at the site plan and part that says proposed porch and septic bed. And then there's this dotted line all around that area. So I'm assuming the septic bed will not be under the proposed porch. Is that correct?
So through you, Madam Chair. So ultimately, it will be up to Peterborough Public Health to determine the installation area of the septic bed. I'm assuming in this case that dotted line is just sort of a general proposed area, and somewhere within that is where the bed will be located. It may even need to shift by the time the health unit issues their permit.
Okay, because I don't think the septic beds can be under porches or decks.
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe you're correct. There is setback distances from dwellings as well as from I believe there's also a setback distance from the tank. Those are regulated by the Ontario Building Code as well. So that whatever does get installed would need to comply with the requirements of the Ontario Building Code.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for this application? Seeing none, we'll move on to A1622, please.
So our final application tonight, A16-22. This is for 3226 Buckhorn Lane. The proposal here is to construct a new 153.92 square foot landing, stair, and open deck area, as well as a 338.63 square foot dwelling addition. The reliefs being requested or required are to reduce the minimum high water setback from 30 meters to 13.8 meters, 88 meters to a new landing, open deck, and stairs, and to reduce the minimum high water setback from 30 meters to 28.55 meters to a dwelling addition. And also, there was a building permit back in 2006 that was issued, and the construction, we've discovered as in the review of this file that it did not get constructed in the right place. It's slightly on an angle and encroaches into the front yard setback. So we're just recognizing that at this point in time, we're cleaning that up to reduce and decrease the front yard setback from 7.5 meters to 7.43 meters to an existing garage. In this case, again, given the sort of the proximity of the proposed addition and the stairs to the existing dwelling, we're considering the site pre-disturbed and are not recommending an archaeological assessment in this particular case. With regard to the reduction of the 30-meter setback, the existing dwelling is located at 12.3 meters from Buckhorn Lake, and the additions are further than that. I do recommend approval. I find that the application meets the 4 tests of a minor variance, and I do recommend approval of this application. And once again, we have Court of Pine Ridge District School Board commenting no concern. The Curve Lake First Nation is again strongly advising an archaeological assessment, and the Autonomy Region Conservation Authority supports the application. And in this particular case, they are saying a letter of authorization is required from the authority, and yeah. So the standard conditions of approval will include approval from Conservation Authority with regard to the approval of this minor variance. And those are my comments for this application. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to take those.
Thank you. And the Region is probably Richard Conley. Do you have anything you wish to add?
Just a small note, this application actually came in front of you guys back in October of 2020. The homeowner brought it in front of you, and nothing has changed, but there were just some setbacks missed to the proposed landing and the addition. So we're just bringing it back in front of you to get those missed setbacks added.
Okay, thank you. And is there anyone else that's in support of this application, Deputy Clerk?
There's no one else here in support or in opposition, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee? Donna?
Yes, through you to Per. I'm just looking at the conditions, and I was listening to you, but I don't think you were recommending an archaeological assessment. Is there a reason why?
Yeah, so I did, through you, Madam Chair, I did cover that a little bit. In this particular case, we're considering that those additions are in very close proximity to the existing dwelling and would have been disturbed as part of the over excavation needed to install the existing dwelling foundation.
Okay, sorry, I missed that part of your presentation.
No problem. Probably just going through it too quickly.
All right, well, if there are no other questions, I'm looking for a motion to move the applications. Anita, seconded by Jerry, all in favor? Great, thank you very much. We have the minutes of the Committee of Adjustment meeting of March 22nd. Andy and Donna, all in favor? That's carried, thank you, and a motion to adjourn. Jerry and Anita, all in favor? That is carried, and our council meeting will begin at 6, Mr. Mayor.
6 o'clock. We'll see you then. Thank you, colleagues.
Hi, Mike. It's Tanya here with the township. You are here in attendance for the Committee of Adjustments meeting.
Hello, sorry about that. What'd you say?
Oh, you were here for a Committee of Adjustments application?
That's correct. Yeah, I've got a
Yeah.
minor variance going in through tonight.
Yeah, so that meeting started at 5:15. So it's actually concluded already, and we're on to a council meeting. I can tell you that your application passed.
Perfect. So I thought I was on at 6 o'clock, 6 to 8 o'clock tonight.
No, the Committee of Adjustments was at 5:15.
My apologies. I would have been there. I thought I was on at 6.
Yeah, no worries. But good news is all went well, and staff will be in touch.
Thank you very much. So everything's passed and we're good to go?
Yeah, you'll want to connect with staff, but it did pass, yes.
Thank you very much for letting me know. And I'll talk to you later.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Excuse me. Okay, colleagues, I think we'll get going. Tanya, are we all set up and ready on YouTube and live?
We're good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. I will call the April 26th regular council meeting to order and begin with our land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Nishiasagi Anashbeg. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. I'm going to ask that we please observe a moment of silence so that council, staff, and members of the public can quietly reflect on our duty to the community we are trying to serve. Thank you, colleagues. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of council, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. Declarations of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Anita.
Yes, under the correspondence, under the 5.
Reports for information.
Oh, yes, the reports for information 5B, the municipal grants. I'm going to declare I'm on the Lakefield Homecoming Planning Committee, and they're on the report for a grant.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure the clerk will have you fill out a form.
I can email it.
Okay. Anybody else? Not hearing any. We will move towards to the minutes. We have the minutes from our regular council meeting of April the 12th. Moved by Deputy Mayor Senes, seconded by Councillor Ballantyne. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay, we have no deputations or public meetings this evening. Any questions that were registered, Madam Clerk?
We do have one question. I'll read it out loud. The question is from Arthur Turella. Why have the managers, the CBO and CAO refused to issue the Turella family their May 24th, 2012 building permit application that was applied for over 3,365 days ago, and the most current construction plans submitted were engineered, stamped, clearly stating they meet the building code?
Well, generally, there's a very prescribed process by which our staff review and adjudicate on the various applications. And as a council, it's our job to ensure that the staff do that. Thank you. Any other questions?
No other questions.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move to municipal staff reports. And the first one is on the Lakefield campground. Janice.
Thank you. Yes, so in further to Council's resolution last summer, where you directed us to go away and work with Orca to try and reach a mutually acceptable agreement for operation of the Lakefield campground, commencing the season of the spring of 2023. We have worked through that process with Orca and present to you tonight the draft operating agreement that we have come up with. This agreement has gone to the Orca board. It went to the board at their meeting last Thursday, April 21st, and at that time the board did approve of the agreement and authorized the board chair and their CAO secretary treasurer to execute the same with the township. I have provided for you the map of the campground as part of the report, and I'll just go very quickly through the highlights that I included in the report for you. So the existing footprint of the campground would remain the same, with of course the exception of the elimination of camping in the overflow area. And we're also recommending that site 18 would be eliminated. That's the furthest site towards the end of the point in the yellow. That site would be eliminated as soon as possible for attrition, just to give a little bit more room between the campground area and the trail area. The yellow and green areas, area 1 and 2, would remain as seasonal areas in the campground for the foreseeable future, while area 3, the blue area, would transition over time and through attrition to transient camping. Area 4, there that you see in the pink, has been traditionally just a tent camping area, and that area would continue to be used for that purpose. In terms of winter storage would be allowed in areas 1 and 2, as long as those sites remain seasonal. In area 3, it would be permitted for the sites as they transition to transient. So as soon as the site in area 3 becomes transient, that winter storage would no longer be permitted. The recommendation is that docking facilities would be provided to accommodate up to 24 small, maximum 20-foot watercraft. And of course, these spaces would be available to registered campground users. There is no boat or trailer storage over winter provided for in the agreement. In terms of some ancillary services that we've talked about, canoe and kayak rentals would be provided and would be managed by Orca as part of the campground operation. Those rentals would be available to both campground users and the general public. Of course, there are provisions in the agreement that would allow us to come to other understandings and other types of amenities as well, and just add those to the agreement over time through addendum to the agreement. The minimum campground rules are set out in Schedule C of the agreement. And of course, the operator would have the ability to establish additional rules as well. The agreement provides for a 5-year initial term with automatic renewal for successive 5 years, subject to mutual agreement of the parties. The compensation provisions provide base annual compensation to the township, an 80% share of winter storage fees, and a 50% share of the annual net profits from the campground operation. For the docking and the canoe and kayak rentals, the profit sharing is a little bit different. It's 75% to the township, 25% to Orca, in recognition of the capital investments the township is making at the outset to make those services possible. Termination provisions would allow for either party to terminate at the end of one season with 1 year's notice. So one party would have to say in October of 1 year that they were terminating the agreement. They would then operate for the agreement would stay in place for the following season and then come to an end. We have been continuing to work through the process of identifying the required infrastructure improvements, and we'll be reporting back to council on that in the coming weeks. And subject to the approval of this agreement, we would start working with Orca through transition planning for the campground for the May 2023 season. There are a couple things still to be worked through from council's resolution. The establishment of a vegetative buffer between the campground and the park and trail areas. We would work through that process in conjunction with Orca, and also seeking some feedback from Curve Lake First Nation, because that was a comment we did receive from them that they would like to be involved in that process. And similarly with the opportunity to provide some interpretive signage along the trail. So just in terms of financial impact, we did provide an analysis just for your information that shows you what our budget for 2022 looks like and what our anticipated budgets for 2022, 2023 and 2024 would look like. So what you'll see is that in accordance with council's direction, the agreement would cover the township's direct costs related to the campground operation and the ancillary services. It would provide an opportunity for us to increase our annual reserve contribution, which is currently at $10,000. Would provide for the debt repayment for the required infrastructure improvements and for the capital investments in the docking systems and the canoe and kayak equipment, and also provide for an increased annual contribution to offset other departmental operations. So that's just a quick rundown of the highlights, and I'd be happy to try and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Janice. I see Sherry has her hand up.
Thank you. That was a great report with a good agreement. The end result will be the problems that ensued, such as messy winter storage, cleanup of the docks, and the trail will be dealt with. Thanks to staff for navigating through this. Orca, who are an environmentally sound organization, manages beaver meat for the city, and it is a jewel in the middle of the city. They will do the same for Selwyn. It seems a win-win for all parties, including the public, who will be able to rent kayaks and canoes at the site, bringing in additional tourists, thereby creating an extra boom for our local business. The interpretive signage will also be installed with the help of Curve Lake First Nation. I've asked Orca to have a look at the lookout at Imagine the Marsh as well to see if there's anything that needs to be done there, because it shares the space. And we did get a report this afternoon. Is Mike on the line?
No, I don't believe he is, Sherry.
I just wondered if we can publicly mention that a couple of trees had to be cut down and be proactive here on this. Is someone that can speak to it?
Yeah, yes, I think there, as council may recall, it was a number of years ago that we brought forward our report in terms of how we were going to manage issues with the ash trees that were being damaged and dying due to the emerald ash borer. So as part of that plan, we have been removing trees that would become a hazard, and of course we are replacing trees to take their place. It's my understanding there were 2 trees that were ash trees that have been taken down in that area. In addition, there were a couple of maple trees that were in the area that would potentially impede the work that was intended to be done on the tennis courts this year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have Donna, Jerry, and Anita. So we'll go to Donna first.
Thank you very much. Through you to Janice, and congratulations to you and the rest of the staff for those negotiations. I have a couple of questions about something's come up here about the legend. First of all, the purple squares, and I think they're in the blue area. They go around site. Oh, maybe, I don't know. I can't see the numbers, but why would there be 2 trailers on a site? There's 2 sites there with purple around it, and it said site with 2 trailers.
Those are just the arrangements that have been made with the current operator, Donna.
Okay. So
We don't manage how the site right now. The operator manages how they rent the sites. So that would be an agreement that they have with the tenants on that site.
So that would likely change after this year, when Orca takes over.
Yeah, so the approach we're going to take, or the approach we're proposing with Orca, is that they would be allowed to work through the process of having the blue area turn into a transient camping area over time. It isn't the intention to go in and just start from fresh in the campground. It would be a transition period through attrition, essentially as tenants change.
Yeah,
so it would depend. Timing would depend on that for those sites.
Okay, and then the orange boxes, site used as storage. So would that be our storage?
No, again, that's the operator's storage.
Okay. I think those were my only questions. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Donna. Jerry.
Thank you, through you. Jerry kind of stole some of my thunder here. I was going to call it a jewel or a gem in the city of Peterborough, and she used jewel, and I would say we've done the same for Lakefield as well. Staff, I think you guys did some great negotiations. We've got, I think, a pretty fair number where this is, a profit center. But more importantly, I think it's a profit center for the village of Lakefield. Lakefield is the economic engine, as we all know, of Selwyn Township. And to keep this as a trailer park keeps all those pistons firing. If we had to turn it into a campground, you're removing a park, sorry. You're taking one of those pistons out, and that engine doesn't drive. And that's what we need in Lakefield to and a council as a whole to push this forward, to find a solution to keep it a campground. I think is important. To turn it into a park, I believe, is moronic and idiotic, as it's detrimental to the business community and detrimental to the entire community. Self-serving needs are fine. If you want to walk around a park, there's all kinds of green space to do it. But this park prevents a couple of things. One, you're not going to be run full of fishermen harvesting fish from the GTA area. This protects that land, and Orca will be great stewards. And I think it's a win-win for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Anita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to congratulate staff and Orca for coming up with such a great draft agreement. My initial concern was that Orca might go in with a bit of a heavy hand and require that all the trailers would have to leave, at the end of the season. So that was one of my concerns, because some of their other properties that they manage or whatever or own, they don't allow the winter storage. So I think that generally this is a great agreement, and I'm very happy to see it. I do have a couple of questions. So in the draft, it talks about prohibition of motorized vehicles. They specifically refer to golf carts and all those other things. My question is with regards to, say, motorized wheelchairs or scooters for people who are perhaps have some physical challenges. So that's one of my questions. With regards to attrition, occasionally I'll see that there's trailer on site for sale, but I'm assuming that under this agreement, that if a person wants to sell their trailer, the site does not go with it. So the attrition would be people, maybe getting too old or moving away or whatever, and getting rid of their trailers, trying to sell their trailers with the trailer site. So I'm assuming the attrition would require that those trailers are actually removed. And then with regards to the financial analysis, according to the chart, it looks like there's no premium site charge starting in 2023. And then my final question is, what was the township receiving from the current operator compared to what the compensation under this agreement with Orca? Those are my questions.
Thank you, Anita. Janice?
Hey, hopefully I won't forget any. Anita, I'll try here. So certainly if somebody needed a motorized wheelchair, certainly that's an accessibility matter, and that would not be prohibited, in the campground. That the prohibition on motorized vehicles is more around golf courts and golf carts and motorbikes, ATVs, that sort of thing. So certainly wouldn't include a motorized wheelchair. With respect to, so the blue area would transition to the transient sites over time with attrition. And I think it's really going to be a process. And I think we, in our discussions with Orca, we kind of want to leave it with Orca to be able to manage that process. We want it to be a smooth process. So I think as people are leaving sites in area 1 or 2, and there's an opportunity for somebody from area 3 to move into one of those sites, they'll work through that whole process with people as trailers are either leaving or changing tenants and that sort of thing. With respect to the financial analysis, so what you see in on the page for our budget for revenues for 2022, that's actually what is in our budget for 2022. So we would have been anticipating receiving around just under $70,000 and being able to contribute $47,000 to department operations after expenses and our reserve contribution. And certainly under the new agreement, as you'll know, our reserve contribution is anticipated to increase by about $15,000. We'd have about $66,000 available to fund the debt for infrastructure and for the docking and canoe and kayak rentals, and would have a little bit more to offset departmental expenses up to $52,203. So it's a significant amount of revenue for the township. I think there was one more, but I'm at a loss which it was now.
Anita?
I think you answered my questions. I did want to, and actually perhaps the mayor wants to speak to this as well. Him and I did get an email from a local resident with regards to the current operator occasionally allowing, I guess, like really loud music bands, or and there was a concern. This resident raised a concern. Is there any way we can ensure that, I guess, these loud concerts or whatever are kept to a minimum, or is that somehow in the agreement? And the mayor might want to speak to that as well.
Well, go ahead, Andy.
No, you go ahead, Janice.
Okay, I was just going to say, certainly we overriding we do have a noise bylaw in the township that needs to be complied with, and also in the rules of the campground, typically, and what Orca has in their other campgrounds, is some restrictions around when sound systems can be used, though not permitted after 10 p.m. They have a quiet time that's established between 12 a.m. and 8 a.m. So there are some additional rules that would be in place in the campground to try and manage those types of issues.
Yeah, thank you, Janice. So our noise bylaw applies the rental agreement that you would sign with the operator when you took up your space would apply. Schedule C is a minimum set of rules. The operator may introduce more if they choose to. And if somebody wants to have a special event, then the operator would have to set the rules for that special event. That's all the kinds of safeguards that are in there, right, Janice?
Yes, for sure. That's right.
Okay, because yeah, both Anita and I did receive that note, so we want to bring that up. Thank you, Anita. On more general comments, first of all, thank you for your report and all of the information and all of the work that's gone into this. So just to confirm, and I think you said this, the financial excuse me for just a second. My apologies. So if I understood the financial side correctly, the revenue stream that will be created not only provides us a little bit more than what we were receiving in terms of our annual contribution, but it will in fact pay for those upgrades that we need to do for the electrical system and for the water and sewer system that exists on the park right now. Did I understand that correctly, Janice?
Yes, you did.
Okay, so this is a deal that essentially the users of the park, not the taxpayers of Selwyn, will be paying for the upgrades. The other thing I want to mention is, and it's a compliment. I went through the resolution of that we passed in July of 2021 and went through all of the different components of it. And it's clear that you've ticked all of the boxes. Either they're completed or they're going to be in the process. And so again, if I understood correctly, you're going to return to council with information about the vegetative buffer that will exist between the walking trail and the actual campground, correct?
Yes.
And would that work be done in 2023? Is that the idea, to get it done at that time?
I think we'll have to go through that process and determine what that buffer is going to look like, and then establish it at the best timing. I couldn't sit here and say it's best to plant what in the fall and what in the spring. So I think we'd probably rely on some expert advice to make sure that we're establishing it at the best time possible.
Yeah, but we're not looking at doing that in 2022. That's probably a 2023 and beyond project, right?
Yes, most likely, unless I guess if there were things that needed to be done in the fall and we were able to get the plan done by then, I think that's unlikely. But yes, I think 2023 would be the most likely time for those plantings to occur.
Okay, well, I think this is, as my colleagues have said, a win-win situation for everyone. I want to again thank the staff for all of the work that's gone into to putting this agreement together, and we look forward to seeing the results. Having said that, I'll look for a motion. Anita, Donna, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you, colleagues. We will then go on to our next report. If I can find my agenda. will be from Lane, which is on our development charges indexing review. Lane?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As requested, providing this information report to council on the CPI indexing and specifically how that specific CPI impacts the township's development charges. And I will just mention our consultant, Watson Associates, has provided some supporting information for this report. And as council is aware, Watson's worked on our development charge for several years, and they're actually very well known across the province. So they have a good wealth of information. The actual CPI relevant to our DC is not yet available for 2022, since that's only released on a quarterly basis. But I have provided some relevant information in graphs and charts on page 2, which takes it up to the end of 2021. I can confirm generally that CPI continues to be higher than what we would say is typical. And when you look at, say, the All Items Canada at the end of the first quarter, we're at about 6.7%, and CPI All Items Ontario at about 7%. Keeping in mind that that is general CPI and not the CPI that we're typically talking about with the development charge. When we look at the charts on page 2, definitely the CPI has fluctuated since our last DC study. And the chart at the bottom was about the closest I could get to providing some additional information to council on how the rates continue to go up with respect to that CPI class. And it is significant for sure. With respect to the balance of the report and the DC charge itself, I provide an overview of why annual indexing is a good practice. It ensures that our DC purchasing power doesn't fall behind throughout the life of the bylaw, because we typically bring a DC bylaw forward every 5 years. And especially with what's going on in the world right now, we want to ensure that we stay current with our DC charges. And overall, what this ensures is that growth pays for growth. And that's the very basic premise in implementing development charges. The balance of the report goes through how we use the development charges here, and generally the 3 components that they offset. And I just wanted to focus a little bit on the top of page 4. Nicole in our department, before she left, did a little bit of work on fuel prices over the last year or 2. And this just ends in the end of 2021 as well. So fuel in particular is something that has a direct impact on our roads project. And DCs are one of those sources of revenues that come in and offset some of our road expenses. So you can see with the increasing prices of fuel, and as council will see later in the agenda with the increasing resurfacing and microsurfacing costs, these costs continue to go up. And so development charges and the related indexing helps us to stay current on those as well. There is a lot of information in the report with respect to development charges, but I won't go into that too much more detail, other than to say the mandatory indexing is a very common practice across Ontario. And of the municipalities that Watson's involved in the survey results that they could get back, over 75% municipalities actually use mandatory indexing. But at this point, I'll leave that there and welcome any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Lane. Any questions from councillors? I don't see any. So I think then we just need to receive the report. You're not looking for us. This is just for information tonight, right, Lane?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. So a motion to receive from Jerry, seconded by Sherry. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Lane. The next report is from Robert Kelly on the More Homes for Everyone Act and the impacts that will have on the township. So Robert,
Yep. So thank you, Your Worship. It's Per here. I'll take the report here going forward tonight. Just put a thank you to both Robert Kelly and to Lane Vance in contributing to this report tonight. It was not just a single effort on my part to put this report together. There's many components to it. So thank you to those two staff for helping me with this one. This is in regard to Bill 109. It's an update for council. There is some recommendations attached to this one. I'll get to those at the end of the report. Essentially, Bill 109, though, is one of the big changes or major changes is to the Planning Act component of it. But there was some other legislative changes attached to Bill 109. The premise of Bill 109 is that Ontario is facing a housing affordability and supply crisis. And so legislation was brought in and passed as of April 14th, 2022 to try and address that through some changes to primarily the Planning Act. First off, just under the development charges, if there's questions in regard to this component, you can direct those to Lane after my presentation. But essentially, Lane is stating that the major change here is that it would specify that treasurer statements are to be made available to the public on a municipality's website or in a municipality's office if no such website is available and in any manner as may be prescribed in the future. And that would be the major change to the Development Charges Act, is to sort of have, I guess, a public accountability type of a change. Lane states that this seems quite acceptable and would not put any additional onus on municipal resources. Moving then on to the Planning Act, there's some small but significant changes here. One of them is there's a refund of fees legislative change that would start to take effect after January 1st, 2023. This would apply to zoning bylaw and site plan control applications. What we're summarizing here and part of our recommendation are to review and update our pre-consultation bylaw and site plan control bylaw to try to address this. One of the major impacts, or one of the main review processes under a Planning Act application is the professional peer review step. And that step can take quite a long time and extend the review process past the legislative timeframes. And that's what would trigger us having to refund fees if we go beyond the legislative timeframes for council decision on those zoning or zoning applications or site plan control applications. So we would recommend that we look into ways to address that through some changes to how we manage that process. I can summarize that in the recommendations when we get to it and how we're proposing to do that. The next item in there is a new item in the Planning Act called a Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator Tool. In short form, this is a new minister's order. It's similar to a minister's zoning order, but the minister's order will be a particular type of order that municipalities can request. And there'll be certain stipulations and certain items that will need to go with this type of request to the minister. Those will be outlined in what's going to be called a CAIH guideline. It is currently, that's just the acronym for Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator. This guideline is currently posted for review and will be finalized in the coming weeks. Essentially, what the order can do is bypass some of the Planning Act requirements for approvals of certain types of development. They can exempt, for example, certain provisions of the provincial policy statement or official plans, etc. However, issues that are possibly stated in those documents would still need to be addressed through the municipality's plan that would be forwarded to the government for approval. So you would still need to deal with matters such as community engagement, Indigenous engagement, environmental protection and mitigation, and those sorts of issues. The next issue would be the delegation of site plan approval to staff. There's a requirement under the Planning Act changes that all site plan control applications be approved by staff for those applications made on or after July 1st, 2022. In this regard, we should note here that our current site plan control bylaw has delegated site plan approval authority to the chief building official already for all buildings and structures under 500 square meters or just over 5,000 square feet in size. We do get about 10 to 20 site plan applications and approvals in a particular year, and many of these are already staff approvals. And the next one is that there'll be an establishment of a municipal authority to provide complete application requirements for site plan applications. So there's some time frame changes that are being proposed, including for site plan applications where currently aren't in effect, including that we have to deem an application incomplete. That's a new change. So we have 30 days to do that. There's also a legislative change here that we can stipulate what constitutes then a complete application. Some additional items in there that I touched on was that there'll be a notice requirement within 30 days regarding complete application, and the site plan application review period is being extended from 30 to 60 days. There's also going to be provincial regulation authority established to require public reporting on development applications and approvals. I don't know the details on those, as those regulations are not out yet. And there's also a provincial regulation making authority to authorize landowners and applicants to stipulate the type of surety bonds and other prescribed instruments to be used to secure obligations in connection with land use planning approvals. And again, we don't know what the format of those or what those mechanisms will be. We don't have the regulation as of yet. The next component here is in regard to some feedback that the province is seeking in regard to housing needs in rural Ontario and Northern Ontario. So they asked a series of questions, and we have some municipal responses for those. Thanks to Robert Kelly, our Chief Building Official and Manager of Building and Planning, for putting together some of the responses that the province is asking for in this regard. So there's 4 questions in regard to northern and rural housing, and then 4 questions on sort of missing middle housing and multi-generational housing. So the 4 questions in regard to northern housing are: what are some of the key barriers to housing in northern communities? And we're saying sort of lack of grant money to expand municipal water and sewer services. They're also asking what kind of flexibility is needed to increase housing in your municipality. We're stating that there's sort of a lack, because the housing prices are going up so much, there's a definite lack of purpose-built rental housing to accommodate people out there. What potential tools or policies could the government consider to address housing needs in your municipality while balancing other provincial priorities? We're stipulating here that through the growth, our experience with the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, that those agricultural systems and natural heritage systems mapping were not necessarily ground truth to a large extent. And that mapping could have been done could have been done better to avoid putting unnecessary restrictions on development in rural areas. And do you have other suggestions for ways to improve housing supply and needs in rural and northern responsibilities? And our response would be that the province could choose to encourage through Planning Act changes and support the settlement area expansions in private or partially serviced areas. And then sort of onto the missing middle component. The province is asking, can we support 4 units and up to 4 stories on a single residential lot? And our response is we don't have firefighting capacity for beyond 3 stories. So it wouldn't be feasible for Township of Selwyn. And they're also asking about permitting as of right secondary suites, garden suites, and laneway houses. And our response is we currently have those policies in place. And then so then the next step here is missing middle. I thought maybe I skipped. Maybe I read your report wrong a little bit there, Robert. But on to the next component here with the component on multi-generational housing. What's the biggest barrier to diversifying types of housing built in existing neighborhoods? Our response is just the pricing is out of reach. And also, again, reiterating that rural firefighting capacity is limited. We can't go to 4 stories to increase our capacity of affordable housing or rental housing. What further changes to the Planning Act and development process would you suggest to make it easier to support gentle density and build missing middle housing and multi-generational housing in Ontario? And our response is the Planning Act could be modified to influence zoning bylaw regulations to merge residential zoning to include medium and low density zoning together to stop exclusionary zoning. So just allowing as of right denser types of buildings from triplexes, fourplexes, and row houses and so on within existing low density neighborhoods. Are you aware of innovative approaches to land use planning and community building from other jurisdictions that would help increase the supply of missing middle and multi-generational housing? In this regard, there is some municipalities that are allowing more work-live units in sort of subdivision areas. This is where you're mixing commercial with residential as part of subdivision development to increase the ability to work and live in place, and while supporting your community with a useful business, such as could be a barber shop, any sort of convenience store, that type of thing. And then, are there any other changes that would help support opportunities for missing middle and multi-generational housing? And our response is easing of rural severance restrictions while respecting the natural heritage and agricultural systems by eliminating severance limits or dates in areas that are not affected by those systems. So just generally promoting severances for lot creation for building, and that still respects the rural area. So the recommendations tied to this report are as follows: that staff be directed to prepare a report to council with respect to potential changes to the pre-consultation bylaw and site plan control bylaw to mitigate the impact of legislative change related to application fee refund requirements in order to have any approved changes in place prior to January 1st, 2023. And that staff be directed to prepare a report to council with respect to the required changes to the site plan control bylaw to delegate all site plan approvals to staff prior to the July 1st, 2022 deadline, and that staff be directed to request the County of Peterborough to ensure that the official plan includes appropriate language to permit the municipalities to prescribe complete application requirements for site plan control applications. And finally, that staff provide feedback to the province's housing needs of rural Ontario and Northern Ontario consultation as outlined herein, and include any further comments provided by council. So I'll end my report there, and any questions from council.
Thank you, Per. I suspect there may be. So your hand up, and then Donna. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you to you. If the province is going to implement strict timelines with us, then the same should be for peer reviewers. The peer review earlier in the process protects the township, but I don't think that is in line with the province's intent to speed things up. So there should be a time frame or timeline for peer reviewers to get back with answers. And if they can't provide them in those times, then we go to someone else for the peer review. I think if we could get quicker timelines from them, we would achieve the best of both worlds. When it comes to the responses, I think they're great. And first of all, I think right off the hop, we shouldn't be included in the Greater Golden Horseshoe. We're rural. And I think that comment needs to be made. Talking about 3-story maximum height, the drawback, is it because we would need aerial fire trucks and firefighting equipment for heights?
So through your worship, yes, that is my understanding, Sherry.
All right, well, if the provincial government wants to go this way, they should be providing funding so that we can get this equipment to be able to use it if they want higher buildings. And in number 3, we were talking about the ground truth mapping rather than overlays. Can we bold that? And number 4, under housing needs of rural Ontario, supporting the settlement area expansion. I'd like that bolded as well. And that's my comments for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Donna, then Jerry.
Yes, through you to Per. Thank you so much for presenting this report. It was very comprehensive and you did an excellent job. And I assume Robert Kelly prepared it. Maybe you were in consultation with him. A lot of my comments, Sherry has already covered. The one thing that I really liked was the recommendation to allow settlement areas to be expanded. That was something that I was really interested in, because that would help a development in Ennismore. So all things that she asked to be bolded, I agree with. And I just have one other question that I don't know what laneway housing is. I've heard of all the other terms, but not laneway housing.
So through your worship, so it's merely a setup where your access driveway to your house is through a rear lane. So there is no front driveway. You only have a front yard and a curb, and then you would have your either your parking area if it's just a driveway, or in many cases laneway houses have a garage that faces the laneway.
So those are just normal houses? Or is this something different?
Yeah. So through your worship, yeah, they're slightly different than a typical house, because the garage would be on the side of the house and you would access it from the driveway. So it's just you end up having a lane at the rear of your house.
Oh, okay.
That is common to all the houses along that laneway.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, historically they have built laneways historically. There's many neighborhoods in Toronto from the 20s and 30s that have these, but more modern subdivisions, they haven't been common for many years.
Yes, I know some places in Peterborough that have that as well, that are on busy streets.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Jerry, and then Anita.
Thank you. Through you to a comment to Donna, next time you go into Peterborough, once you go past the Hyundai dealership, hang a left into that Mason Home subdivision. 90% of those are set up like that, and you can thank the province for their density and the spread of COVID for that matter. Through you to Per, sorry. The peer review on page 2 that you're sort of considering, how do you do a peer review in pre-consultation? It kind of seems like an oxymoron. I'm trying to get my head around that, because as we saw today with a minor variance, the question was asked about where the septic's going to go, and the answer was, well, we're going to wait for the Peterborough Health Unit will determine where it's going to go, but that's the rough area. So in the pre-consultation process, as I understand it, here's my idea, here's what I'd like to do. How do you peer review that when you don't have everything firmed up? That's my confusion.
Per, I'll take this one.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Jerry, it's not really during the pre-consultation. Our thought is to have the peer review conducted before a complete application is deemed. So peer review would be part of the complete application. That's kind of the thought process that we have looking at that aspect of things. So we'll have our pre-consultation. Their consultants will put together their application package, and it'll be sent to our peer reviewing agencies. And then that complete package will be submitted to us so that we can deem it a complete application, and then we'll take it to the next step. And if there's an additional round of reviewing needed, then we'll adjust it at that point.
All right, fair enough. Okay, that makes sense now, because as it read in here, peer review in the pre-consult. So fair enough. You think it can work? Rock on.
Thank you, Jerry. Anita?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think most of my questions have already been answered, but I did want to say it's a very comprehensive report, very good. With regards to eliminating the severance restrictions, one of the comments towards the end of the report, with this, I think we had talked about something similar not too long ago with regards to, say, if there's a large farm property, and rather than having only the one severance from 1970 or whatever it was. So are you suggesting that, let's say it's a farm property and all things being equal, that it would allow for more severances as opposed to just the one or the two? And then also with regards to the refund of fees, if the timelines, the legislated timelines are not met, so if the fee has to be refunded, does the process still continue on for whatever the application is? So those are the two questions I had.
Go ahead, Per.
Okay, thank you, Worship. So through your worship, so in regard to the first one, I think possibly reading too much into that. I think we still need to respect the natural heritage system and the agricultural system. We did note that, you know, they definitely weren't ground truth to any larger extent. They were tabletop exercises in defining those from a provincial standpoint. Whatever policies do come out in regard to allowing future and possibly more severances in the rural area would need to be in keeping with the difference between natural feature areas, agricultural areas, and just straight rural areas. In terms of numbers, I mean, that's something I think we would need to like really think about and discuss how many per lot, for example. As you mentioned, we are moving or proposing to move the date with our current official plan amendment update or official plan update from just the one severance to two in rural areas, and also moving the date forward from 1978 to 1995, if memory serves. So any recommendations we would be looking to build on in terms of what we're already proposing would be in keeping with that type of thinking, right? Whether that maybe goes to 3 in rural areas and what form additional lots would take in agricultural areas, I'm not sure. But there may be some opportunity to again look at something like from years past where we used to have farm retirement lots, for example, right? That were ended some years ago, but that could be a thought that could be reconsidered, I suppose. Oh, and then your second question. Freeman, what was the second question again? Lost on my train of thought here.
Sorry, it had to do with the refund of fees. I think that's on page 2. Does that stop the application process if the fee has to be refunded, or does a municipality basically lose out on that particular source of income if it goes past the deadline?
Yeah, so my understanding of the legislation is just that if you go past and there's different time frames. So there's percentages of the funds that are refunded after a certain amount of days, and there's slightly difference between zoning amendment applications and site plan control, because ultimately for zoning amendment application, for example, that doesn't have an official plan amendment related to it, the decision-making time frame is 90 days. Where for site plan control, it's 60 days that we have to make a decision on that matter. And so the legislation is tied to 0, 50%, 75 and 75%, and then a certain number of days that will represent 100% of the time where you get 100% of the refund back. But regardless of the fact that we may go past X number of days and they get a full refund, we would still have to process that application. So yes, we could be out completely. We could be refunding the entirety of their application fees, and but still have to turn around and make a decision on the application.
Is that good, Anita? Yeah. Okay. I have a few comments and questions. So first of all, I want to join my colleagues in thanking everybody for the hard work they put into providing this information for us. It's really, really good. I want to start off by reiterating what the deputy mayor said. You want to deal in part with the housing situation in Selwyn Township, then you cannot have a planning document, the growth plan, that applies to King and Bay in Toronto, apply to Ward and Communication Drive or Concession in Queen Street. There are two utterly different realities, and have a growth plan apply for downtown Toronto that applies to Selwyn makes no sense, and it's a big part of the challenge, and this legislation didn't deal with that. I have a question, a general question, and you may want to not answer it, fair enough, and whoever wants to take it. But in your professional opinion as planners, will this legislation increase the housing stock that otherwise would have been built in Selwyn? Anybody want to answer that?
So it's highly subjective to say anything about whether it will or not, but they're merely process changes, and I don't see, we hit on there's like some refund things in here. There's a potential for a municipality to defer a decision to the minister with still documents required in support of an application required for the province to review, similar to what a municipality would need to review in order to make a decision. So you're maybe changing the approval authority in the one instance and refunding some fees in another. I personally don't see how this is going to make things go all that much faster to get more housing out there built. That'd be my opinion.
Right, and you sort of touched on this in your answer to Anita. If this is the complementary question, are the provisions that are contained in this bill likely to drive up the costs for the township? You costs as in terms of income generation to us to support staff and the municipality, for example? Well, costs in terms of, I'm going to guess that some of the things that Lane's going to be required to do in terms of the transparency for the development fees, some of the fees that may end up getting refunded. I just generally, are we likely to be facing either decreased revenue or increased costs as a result of the legislation?
Yeah. I don't know, Jen, if you want to comment on that, but it stands to reason that absolutely, to some extent, if we're going to end up refunding fees because we happen to go over a certain number of days, there'll be definitely a loss of revenue there. I'm not sure how much, Lane didn't think it was going to be that much impact to him or his resources to post some information on our website. But yeah, I guess the main impact here is the refunding of fees that'll end up having to occur. Other than that, I don't see a major impact. Us moving sort of what Robert was talking about, and moving the peer review to the complete application stage, so that the proponent would need to complete his peer reviews with our consultants before submitting application, which then our application would just be focusing on sort of the public review requirements on the Planning Act. I don't see that as changing our costs all that much.
But on that point, Per, isn't in reality what you're doing just starting the clock at a different time?
Yeah, I would agree completely with that. And that was sort of the thinking, is how do we, because once you submit and you deem an application complete, the clock never stops ticking. You can't stop it. So that the thinking is, okay, how do we get some of the requirements that we're having to do for our planning application reviews outside of the clock, so that we can then once we deem an application complete, then we can fairly certainly process it in the legislated time frame. And that's the thinking there.
Robert's got his hand up, I think.
Yeah, sure, Worship. I just had one further comment. Some of this will have to really analyze once the regulations get released, because we don't know if there's going to be any provisions. One of the biggest problems we have with meeting timelines is not necessarily getting a response from our peer reviewers, but receiving a second or third submission from the applicant's consultants. So I don't know if their delay will have an effect on whether fees are refundable. So that's a component that we sort of need to see in the regulation before we can truly answer that question.
Okay. Just changing the topic just a little bit. When you talk about ground proofing, because I think it's important that this be clarified, you're not suggesting to find a way to build on environmentally sensitive land. You're just trying to make sure that when we designate something as environmentally sensitive, it is indeed just that it's not just a tabletop exercise, but we've actually looked at what's there and determined that it's either a natural heritage system or an agricultural system. Am I interpreting that correctly?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that, because right now this is I won't say theoretical, but nobody's walked the land and actually looked at most of it. Correct?
That is correct. There was some mapping, and Per would be able better to speak to it. There was the Corth natural systems mapping that was ground truth that we've or that the county's requested the province recognize.
Have they agreed to that yet? Do we know?
To my knowledge, they have not.
Okay, on to a different one. On page, oh my goodness, page 3 of the report, you talk about the Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator tool, which is the replacement for the ministerial order. And if you go into it, you have the phrase, in issuing an order, a minister is able to, and you have a bullet there, provide an exemption for other necessary planning related approvals from provincial plans, provincial policy statement, and municipal official plans. So I'm going to assume that would mean, well, I shouldn't assume it. Would that mean that an exemption could be provided to a conservation authority regulation, or an exemption provided to a public health regulation? Could it be an exemption to the building code, or none, or some of the above? Or do we know? Or do we have to wait for the regs?
So my understanding of this is it's strictly related to planning policy and planning regulation, but we could certainly look into that a little bit more to see if it's more expansive than that, that it can be, these exemptions can be extended to other pieces of legislation. I'm not aware that it is, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay, and have I read it correctly that the minister will not issue one of these orders unless the council makes a formal request of the minister to do so?
That's correct. That is the intent of this tool, that it is a municipal council requesting that the minister review the application and be the approval authority for the application.
If a developer were to approach council and ask council to request such an order and council was to decline, is that an appealable decision?
That's a good question. I need to get back to you on that.
Okay, thanks, fair enough. And I have a question, one last one, and it goes back to your responses, and I have to agree with my colleagues, great responses. But I wanted to go to the response on the last page to question 2. What further changes to the planning and development process would you suggest to make it easier to support gentle density and build missing middle housing? And the answer says the Planning Act could be modified to influence zoning bylaw regulations to merge residential zoning to include medium and low density zoning together to stop exclusionary zoning. So if I understand that correctly, that would mean that in a subdivision, let's say like Woodland Acres, which I believe is zoned low density, that this change would mean that somebody by right, you wouldn't need a zoning change, could go in there and build a triplex or a fourplex by right. So if you're living in a single family dwelling and the next door is a single family dwelling, without a zoning change, there could be a fourplex built beside you. Is that right?
Yes, Your Worship, that is correct.
Okay. And the last point, you mentioned that we have in our official plan secondary suites, but if I understood correctly, the legislation now allows for a third suite, but we haven't implemented that, awaiting the change in the county official plan. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Worship. So that was updated in the Planning Act, and once the official plan is approved, then we will capture that within our next comprehensive zoning bylaw.
Which will hopefully be on July the 1st, right, or 2nd?
Yeah.
Oh, no, so no, our zoning bylaw, okay, no.
Right.
Official plan will go through.
I would suspect we'll embark on that process probably in 2024. I would expect that the official plan might get approved early in 2023 if we're fortunate, but I'm not sure what the province has on their table.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, and those answers to those questions, your intent is to submit those to the ministry, correct?
Yes, Your Worship.
Yeah, okay, good. So we have some recommendations there, colleagues. Is anybody willing to move those? Sherry, seconded by Anita. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, we are now on to the, and again, thank you staff for that great piece of work. We are now on to the consent agenda. Does anybody have any items they would like to pull? Donna? You're muted, Donna.
Under correspondence 6A and under the county report number 8.
Okay.
I just want to remind that I am going to declare on 5B the municipal grants.
Yeah, so we're going to deal with 5B. As soon as I get everything pulled, we'll deal with 5B first, and then we'll come back. So make it easier for you. But does anybody else want any items pulled? I don't see any. And I'm just checking my own list here, sorry. I'd like 5D pulled. And I think that's the only one. So for me, so we have, so I just want to make sure I've got this right. So we're going to deal with 5D, 6A, and 8. But first, before we deal with those three, we're going to deal with 5B. So if you want to leave the room, okay, colleagues, we have a report that outlines our annual contributions. This includes both our normal contributions, but also ones that we put as part of the recovery plan that couldn't be used previously because people weren't able to do the events. So moved by Sherry, seconded by Jerry. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, now Anita, if somebody could send her a note or if she's listening in the background, can return to the meeting. There she is. Okay, so I had a question on 5D. I don't know if Rick is at the meeting. If not, maybe Janice, you can take this. But in that report, if I read it correctly, we're not going to be able to do the same amount of work that we had hoped to because of escalating costs. And so I really had two questions. Is that going to have a meaningful impact on our asset management plan? Because obviously we have a rotation where these things come up on a regular basis. And so now we're going to start to, it would seem that we may be starting to fall behind. And is this something that we do we want to consider whether we want to draw on reserves in order to get the work done as opposed to let it slide? Because I'm worried that if we start to let it slide this year, then next year, and we will never catch up again. And maybe I'm being overly concerned. I'm not sure. So I'm not. Janice, did you want to take this, or is Rick there?
I don't think Rick is here, so yeah, I will try to answer it.
Sorry, Janice. I'll just let you know Rick is here.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't see you there, Rick.
Sorry, he's on the phone.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd like to keep going with it. Like you said, if you don't do it, you start to fall behind. But it was quite an increase. Like it was a 50% increase from last year's cost. So I don't know how Lane would work on that or what his thoughts are on it, being on the financial side, because we're going to have to start building up on this if this is the new normal.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, I could weigh in on there. Just given the significant increase in 1 year, I think that's why we're proposing that we would just defer a few projects this year. They won't have a detrimental effect on the overall program. We're still getting a couple of the bad spots done on a few roads there on Irish and Maloney. And then we'll take a look next year, and if this is going to be a trend, then we'll have to look at a combination of things. So pulling more money from reserves or dedicating more funding to resurfacing in future budgets. But it would be my preference that for this year, we would just take the preferred approach we've outlined in the report.
So we'll eat it this year, but we'll take a serious look in budget 2023 if this cost structure is become permanent. We're going to have to look at a way to keep up there.
That's correct.
Yeah, so that'll be on the 2023 budget work. Okay. 6, the correspondence report. I think, Donna, you had an item?
Yes, it's actually 6A6. The whole report is 6A. So number 6 is a report from the Office of the Acting Ontario Fire Marshal. And it's indicating that many municipalities are finding it challenging to purchase textbooks and other materials necessary for the new training requirements. And I contacted Gord, our fire chief, and he indicated that it was pretty certain that we would face considerable increases in the coming years because of that very issue. And the report says the Fire Marshal's Public Safety Council is looking at ways to support the procurement of these materials. So I just wanted to make sure that I know we have sent a submission regarding these new regulations, but I just wanted to make certain that we're registered with the Fire Marshal's Public Safety Council, indicating that we would experience difficulty in purchasing all these new textbooks and materials. So I didn't check further with the chief that we're registered, but Janice may know.
Janice?
Yeah, I'm not actually sure, and I'm not sure if it's a registration process or not, Donna, but certainly as part of the changes to this the certification requirements, we would be looking to any type of support that would be available to us from the Fire Marshal's office, whether it be through group procurement or whether it's through some breaks on fees for training. So we will be advocating for as much support as possible from the Fire Marshal's office.
Okay, thank you, Janice.
Okay, and I think, Donna, you had a question about the county report?
Right, that's number 8, and it's talking about the Grow Peterborough Organics facility. Now, I realize that they're just in the planning stages. I don't think they've even started building. And I just wondered if anybody has heard if they're planning in the future to expand the collection into the county. Or maybe they don't even know yet because they're probably not certain how it's going to work. But I just wondered if anybody knew if there was a potential.
I will defer that to the committee chair, Sherry.
Thank you. Do you? Yes, the Waste Management Committee is meeting. In fact, we had one this morning. And we have to wait until we get specifics from the city. We don't know yet what the dates are, when it will be established. We don't know what the prices are, but certainly the county is interested. And the city would be interested too, because the more organics they receive, the better it is for them. And I think they'll be looking far beyond Peterborough County, which may pose a problem for us with trucks traveling through our county to get to the landfills. So there's a lot to look at when it comes to waste management. There's a lot of balls in the air right now. But the short answer is yes, we would be looking to use that facility.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Okay, I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent items with the exception of 5B, which we already did when Sherry was out of the room, when Anita was out of the room. Jerry is moving and seconded by Anita. All those in favor? Carried. Sherry, were you shaking your head? Oh, we're okay? Okay, good. So that then takes us, there are no petitions, so that then takes us into our portfolio reports, and we'll start with Donna.
Okay, thank you. The first one I had here was fire, and I've already alluded to the concerns of the textbooks and the training materials. And I forgot to ask the chief when I was speaking with him, and maybe I missed this, but Janice will probably know, are we having the pancake breakfast this year?
Janice?
No, I don't believe we are, Don.
Okay, thank you. The library board met this afternoon and we made the final decision that it would be a remote recognition again. We previously had given the volunteers $20 gift cards from local restaurants, and we made the decision that we would find the money in the budget to increase it to 25 because we did get some requests for we were going to have boxed dinners, and most of them that we received were approaching $25, and then there would have been tax. So we've decided to give $25 gift cards. We're going to ramp up the recognition a little more by having the door prize draws again, only they'd be remote again. And there was talk about the board doing a little video thank you, and we really haven't gotten too far with that yet, but so we're going to do a few more things that we did last year. Last year it was just mailed gift certificate and a letter of thank you, so we're planning on doing a few more things there. The Police Services Board met yesterday, and Tanya and Rick have been dealing with 2 companies and have also spoken to other municipalities with regard to the Speed Awareness Board. And it was a consensus that the battery operated board was the best for mobility. Although the batteries only last 2 weeks, they will purchase 2 batteries so that they can easily be switched. The solar boards are too heavy to move around, and that was our intent, to move the board from place to place. So the quotes are being finalized, and hopefully we'll have our Speed Awareness Board by late spring. The link for April, Route 31, 206 riders, Route 32, 153. Both of these routes are down from March, where number 31 was 485 and 32 was 352. But I suspect that this could be related to Trent classes ending for the season. And I have nothing to report further for recreation, but Jerry may be able to supplement that. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Sherry?
Thank you. Through you. I just wanted to mention I'm on the Awards Anniversaries Committee for the county. And I wanted to remind our colleagues that the county awards are May the 27th at the Kevin Monaghan New Arena. The start time is at 6:30. It's earlier than usual because we're having 2 sets of awards. And I encourage all our members of council to come to this award ceremony if you can, because there's going to be special recognition of one of our residents. I won't say anything more about it. There is, as far as the economic development, there's some good news. King's Cross British Shop is a new location at Fowler's Corners beside the Coffee Time. They specialize in yummy British cakes, pies, treats, and more, and they opened on Easter weekend. Hambleton Landscaping has moved into the old Hopkins Motors on Lakefield Road. There's an official plan public meeting on Wednesday, May the 18th at 9:30 a.m. through Zoom, if you can make it. We are having business workshops in partnership with Peterborough and McCarthy's Business Advisory Center. It's being hosted at the Lakefield Smith Community Center. On May the 5th, there's a lean model canvas workshop. June the 16th, writing a business plan workshop. And I'm told there's still CIP money available, so that's good for our businesses. Young's Point General Store is offering garden decor starting on April the 30th. And wanted to mention that Fourth Lakes Construction were named Custom Home Builder of the Year for 2021 at the Peterborough and Kawartha Home Builders Association Housing Design Awards. And that's my report.
Thank you, Sherry. Jerry?
Thank you, sir. As far as public works goes, sweeping, and filling potholes that have destroyed the road in the hope of not having to microsurf everything with the costs that they are. As far as park and rec, not a lot going on. It's a little quiet right now. Baseball is going to start up shortly in May with most of the leagues back, which I think is a good sign. James Gang's back in action over in Ennismore. All the park and rec staff are doing well. And until the grass starts growing, they're painting and cleaning. You got time to lean, you got time to clean.
Thank you, Jerry. Anita?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So our Heritage Committee will be meeting on Thursday. We will be reviewing our most recent list of proposed properties, which will eventually come to council for consideration of, so to be on the Heritage Register. Two of our members have done a tremendous amount of work, and it's going to be quite an extensive list. That will come to council at some point. I continue to work with 3 or 4 other people, the Lakefield Homecoming event in August. On the Friday night, Lakefield Legion will be presenting a welcoming reception with live music, food, that sort of thing. A couple of the events on Saturday, there's going to be a memorial plaque placed at Hot Peg Point, honoring the Indigenous people and Moses and Nellie Marsden, who were early Indigenous people that came and visited with the settlers and that sort of thing. There'll be a golf tournament. The core is a sidewalk sale on Main Street in Lakefield. The Village Lions will be hosting a dance at the arena on the Saturday night. On the Sunday, the Lakefield and District Lions will be presenting a classic car show with live music. And there's lots of other things that are sort of currently in the works. We've been working quite hard. It's like three and a half months from now. And I noticed that the Lakefield Lions are having a pig roast at Lakefield Fairgrounds on, I think it's June 11th. So that sounds like lots of fun. I think they're selling tickets May 15th, I think, at the Marshal Center.
Thank you, Anita. Donna, was there something?
Yes, I just wanted, Anita, I don't seem to have the dates for this in my book. Could you just refresh my memory, please?
Yes, it's August 5th, 6th, and 7th, I think is the dates. Yeah, August 5th to 7th. That's the Friday to the Sunday.
Okay.
And there'll be more information as there's other events that we're sort of working on and just waiting to get some solid plans on other events.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, very briefly, Sherry mentioned some of what I was going to mention on the county side. So our official plan, the formal public meeting, we've had a number of public information sessions. The formal public meeting is May the 18th. People need to pre-register to participate. We also are set to do our final approval for our new development charges bylaw on May the 2nd. So that will complete that. We should be having the transportation master plan come forward to county council in the not too distant future. I also would like to add to Sherry's suggestion about coming to the awards ceremony. If you have a chance to do it, we think this is what, first time in, I guess we missed 2 years, right? So that we're able to do it. So I think that's critically important if you can. And Sherry, did I remember that you are looking at perhaps changing the frequency of the awards?
Yes, there was a report that came to council with suggested changes to the policy for awards and anniversaries. And one of the suggested changes was to have it biannually rather than every year. It seems with some municipalities, including ours sometimes, that some of the awards, it's hard to come up with people on a year-by-year basis. And so it was thought that maybe doing it a little less would make that easier. But the recommendation is coming to the CAOs at all of the townships to weigh in, and a final report will be coming back to council with regards to that in the future.
Okay, so that's still something that's a work in progress that hasn't been completed yet. Okay, good. So that we have a closed session, but before we do the closed session, I think what we'll do, if unless there's any objection, is we'll just do our bylaws so that we don't have to do that when we come back. So we have a number of them. We have the authorizing the agreement between the Township of Selwyn and Orca regarding the Lakefield campground. We have the bylaw regarding the Chemung Lake District Lions Club, and we have the bylaw to deal with the transfer payment for the Ontario Trillium Foundation. So I would look for somebody to move those. Anita, seconded by Donna. All those in favor? Okay. And colleagues, before we go into close, is there any other or unfinished business anybody wants to bring up? Not seeing any. I'll now entertain a motion to go into close. Jerry and Sherry, all those in favor? So colleagues, we will leave this call and go on to a conference call. It is 7:33, so if we could ask everybody to be ready for the call at 7:40. So that's 7 minutes from now if you call in. Okay, colleagues, we'll see you on the other side. Thank you.